timely fall day. I am Sarah Gleason-Ross. As I've met some of you, I'm the new Director of College Counseling here at Gilman. I'm coming to you after a long career in education, and most recently I was the Director of College Counseling at Kent School in Kent, Connecticut, a boarding school. And I was also the Assistant Head of School for Enrollment, so I oversaw admissions and I oversaw college counseling as well. It has been an utter thrill for me to be at Gilman these past few months, to be amongst your students who I am finding to be such talented young men, such interesting young men, such engaged young men, and to be at a school that really is a beacon on the hill. I walk to work from the other end of Homeland every day, and I climb that hill towards this steeple, and it is a joy to come to work every single day. So thank you for sharing your children with us. You'll hear more today about the process at Gilman School around college. But I think the running theme, I hope you will hear, is that from the moment your son stepped foot on this campus, whether it was in pre-K, or is it pre-first, or in 9th grade or middle school, they were on this path of success. There's no question about it. I mean, the finest faculty, all this opportunity that surrounds them each and every day. So whatever worry or concern you might have, and I think you can rest very well assured that your children are in extremely good hands. And some of those hands is the staff with whom I've had the privilege to work for the past few months are just top of the line. We spend the fall working very hard on letters of recommendation. It's one of the favorite parts of the work for me, to celebrate each child for all their accomplishments throughout their high school career. And the talent that is here is really quite remarkable. These are very gifted people. So let's start with one of the most important people, is Mrs. Vivian Sawyer. I hope you all know Vivian. Vivian is the rock of the office, and she's a very important person to know because she kind of manages all the day-to-day operations, and she has a wonderful experience with Gilman School because she's been here for a few years. Right, Vivian? How many? You going to tell us? She won't tell me. All right. And I'm going to turn it over now to my colleagues before we go to our main speakers. They can introduce themselves, and they're going to go into a little bit of some of the process that we have ahead of us. And who gets to go first? Mr. Baker. So let me take it away.
Good morning. I'm Justin Baker. This is my 10th year at Gilman School for Lawyers. I teach English literature to seniors, do college counseling, I coach baseball in the middle school. I'm also the junior form chair, which means I get the whole junior class in front of me once a cycle. And so that's convenient because a lot of the stuff related to college counseling I can talk to them about when I have them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline for college counseling at Gilman. This is the first of 2 parent coffees that we're going to host for sophomore parents. There'll be another one in the spring. I don't have the exact date yet. Our friend from Capital Educators, which is a test prep company, he comes and he gives a wonderful presentation on standardized testing in the spring. So look out for that date. It'll be sometime in April. I hope you're getting, I hope you got the first of what will be many newsletters from our office. So you should have received a fall. We title them by season for sophomore parents. So you'll get a fall, a winter, and a spring newsletter from our office. And I can summarize the basis of the whole sophomore newsletter arc. Try really hard in your classes, do well in school, build relationships with teachers, and try new things, right? There you go, that's all 3 newsletters. It's never too early to start thinking about financial aid. So there's an Ames financial aid evening hosted every year in the fall. So we just had one last month, and I hope maybe next year you'll join us. It's at a different place every year, but that will be in the newsletters as well. So there's a fall financial aid night next year. Your son will be assigned a college counselor in the winter of his junior year, and you can make a request for a counselor either in December of that year or have be assigned a counselor in January of that year. So the formal process really kicks off in the winter of junior year. Visiting colleges. This is a question we get quite a bit. When should we start looking at colleges? Well, I would say at this point, if you're traveling somewhere and you're in an area and there's a college around you, go ahead and see it, right? It doesn't have to be a targeted visit. It can just be we're in this general area and there's a college here. Our office does, for the second year now, we host a college tour. Last year we went to see 7 schools in New England, and this year we'll go and see 6 schools in the South, a couple in Virginia and several in North Carolina. So we actually just solidified the dates on that. So there'll be a college tour of the South from June 13th, right after graduation, through the 16th. So it's 3 nights and 4 days. And last year we had a blast. So that's the timeline, and I'll introduce my next colleague here, Mr. Herman, who's going to talk a little bit about standardized testing.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much for coming in. I've been here 8 years now, and I teach one section of U.S. history, and I have the most coveted job at the school. I'm the assistant JV golf coach. And so that's, I like to say, that's a job that I created. I saw the need, and I filled it, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. But here, standardized testing. It is something that your boys are going to have to do, and it's something that will take place. And there are kind of, where I start with this, with the boys and with anybody that wants to know about standardized testing, the best test prep is reading outside of the curriculum from the day that you've learned how to read. It is taking a rigorous academic program, and then it's taking the test. Taking the test a couple times. So the first time you take the test, it won't be your highest score. Second, third time is probably going to be the number that's going to be your high score. So reading outside of the curriculum, academically rigorous program, and then taking the test. Your sons already took the PSAT as a sophomore. They'll take it again as a junior. Those scores don't get reported to colleges, but it's something that will qualify them for the national merit competition. Again, those 2 scores, sophomore and junior year PSATs, don't get reported. It's really just a practice or preliminary SAT. Our advice is to take both the ACT and the SAT. And for most boys, the first test is going to be in the winter of their junior year. And oftentimes, after that first kind of baseline test, they're going to feel more comfortable with one. Their scores are going to be better on one than the other, but taking both is important. And then taking it, most boys will take it 3 times. Once in the winter of junior year, again in the spring of junior year, and then again in the fall of their senior year. Okay? So that's 3 test dates that most boys will take. Some schools are recommending, and some still require, subject tests, SAT subject tests. You may have heard of them as SAT 2s, but they're 1-hour standardized tests on a specific subject. And most boys will take them in the spring of their junior year, and so that'll be the June test date. You can take up to 3 in one test date. For sophomores, if your son is in the Honors Latin class, Honors Latin 3, they are required by that department to take the June subject test. And so that will be June of this year. A handful of your boys may be thriving in chemistry, and they're in the honors chemistry, and based on the recommendation of his teacher, they can sit for the June SAT subject test in chem. And then the same thing with EuroCiv. There's an AP European History subject test, and so those could be the 3 that you can take on that June test date. You can take up to 3. Okay? With those other 2, EuroCiv and Chem, have your boys speak with their teacher, and they will be the best advisors for whether or not they'll be well positioned. Unlike the PSAT, where the school registers your son for the test, the SAT, the ACT, the subject tests, and the AP exam are separate registrations, and so that falls on moms and dads often to do that registration. That's not something that the school does. And so those registration processes will be sent home through those newsletters that we'll be sharing with you all. Mr. Baker mentioned the capital educators. That is geared for the juniors, preparing them for that winter SAT testing. There are Sunday afternoons, there are one day during the week, and then there are a handful of full-length practice tests on Saturday mornings to mimic the actual SAT administration, which are on Saturday mornings. And then there's a growing number of test-optional schools, so not all schools require SATs or ACTs as part of the application process. That full list of schools can be found at fairtest.org, fairtest.org. And so oftentimes there's something else that may be required. So for example, Franklin and Marshall up the road, they require 2 graded papers from the junior or senior year instead of those SATs or ACTs. And so if your son is not a great test taker, we still recommend them to take the test, the ACT and the SAT, but know that there are a growing number of schools that don't require it. This is a lot of information, and the communication that we send home through those newsletters is a great segue to Ms. Follins, who's going to talk a little bit about communication in the office.
So I'm Anna Follinsby. This is my 5th year in the college counseling office here at Gilman. Prior to Gilman, I spent 9 years working in college admissions, so I came here to come to the other side of the desk. I teach a section of sophomore English, so I might have some of your boys in class. We just started some Shakespeare. I coach intramural ultimate frisbee in the spring, so I'm the 3rd string coach. I'm the assistant coach to Jim Morrison and Dallas Jacobs, who are far more accomplished frisbee players than I am. And I'm an advisor, and I also run the senior encounter program, so I'll get to work with your boys again, even through that process in senior year. Justin and Matt have mentioned briefly the newsletters, and just quick show of hands, did you all receive the sophomore newsletter that went out from our office pretty recently? Okay, did anyone not receive that? Okay, so these go to the same email address that all school information goes to, but if you did not get that for some reason, feel free to send us an email or call, and we can forward that, and we can also check in the system to make sure that we have the accurate email address for you. So these newsletters will be the main source of information from the college counseling office. They'll pick up in frequency as your boys get into junior and senior year. We do, of course, also just use email sometimes. So when we need to tell you about, for example, that Ames Financial Aid Night, we'll probably put that in a newsletter and then also send you an email just to reiterate that message. We maintain a Facebook page for the college counseling office. We understand a lot of your sons are not on Facebook anymore, but many parents are. So if you just search for that, it's called College Counseling Office, Gilman School. We post a lot of articles and essays and blogs about college admission in hopes of keeping our families kind of updated on what's going on and what people are talking about. And sometimes we'll post pictures of our tours. A lot of our work is also going to visit colleges ourselves and going to conferences, so we'll post updates and you can see where we are and what we're up to. Your sons may have already started getting information from colleges directly, so a lot of schools will get names from PSAT, from College Board, and that will continue to ramp up as they get through the process. So you may be getting already brochures in your mailbox every day, or some might be getting flooded with emails from colleges. And so this is also great information, and I encourage you to hang on to those brochures, even if it's a school you've never heard of, a school you don't know about. Just keep that stuff in a place where you can kind of leaf through it sometimes. The college websites are also a really excellent source of information. When you're getting to the point where you are visiting colleges, you will almost always sign up for those visits right on the college website, so you can see schedules of when tours are offered, when information sessions are offered. You can find out details on their application policy. Are they a test optional school? For example, like Matt talked about, what majors are offered, what kinds of programs are available in a study abroad with internships. So I encourage you to make good use of those websites as sources of information. And then we will also host over 100 college admission representatives at Gilman every fall. So we encourage juniors and seniors to come to those meetings. So your boys will start to get invitations to those next year, and these are a great way to learn about colleges without having to even leave the building. So again, it's over 100 colleges from, Loyola University just down the street to, gosh, who is the furthest? UC San Diego. So it's a wide range of schools. And then lastly, the College Counseling Office maintains a website. Some of you may have seen that, but we have a ton of information on there also. Questions to ask when you're visiting colleges, preparing for interviews. So if you get a chance, our website has a lot of good information. And then I'll just close by saying that, as Justin mentioned, we will start officially working with your sons next year. They get those assignments in winter of junior year, but we are happy to be a resource before that. So please don't feel like you can't be in touch with us until winter of junior year. We're happy to answer questions. You can use Ms. Sawyer, Vivian, as a starting point, and she can just connect you to someone who's available. Our email addresses are all on the website. So we're very happy to field questions, to give guidance, to offer advice. And we work closely with advisors also, with our teachers who are advisors, to give them some of the same advice too on things like course selection and test prep and thinking ahead. So just know that we're always here and happy to help. All right, then I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. So now to our keynote speaker. We didn't know that was your name.
Yeah, exactly.
It is really my thrill to introduce to you Susan Hanks from Union College. One of the reasons is I have a very clear and distinct memory of the first time I met Susie Hanks. It was in my office at Kent School. It was 2006. I was just a little ways away from starting my own college process with my own children. I was a college counselor, and she was just such a breath of calm and inspiration and wisdom. The reason being, I think at the time, one of your children was going through the process herself. And so it was, I just have such a clear memory of that moment. So we're so thrilled to have Susie with us today for that very reason. I think having just heard from Anna and Justin and Matt, this is all about communication. This is all about feeling good about where we are as counselors and as parents and how we advise our children through this process. And as I said earlier, you're all on the right track already. Everything is happening as it should here at Gilman School. But we want to be here to reassure you that you know that you're taking the right steps and doing the right thing. And so we're thrilled to have Susie here to share that wisdom with us. She said, her bio is very simple because she's only worked for 2 institutions. She was a graduate of Lehigh University. She received her master's in education from Lehigh and worked there from 1982 to 2008. And then in 2008, our dear friend and someone else I admire greatly, the Dean of Admission at Union, stole her away to come and be the Senior Associate Dean of Admissions at Union College, where her responsibilities include travel coordinator, student search, athletics liaison, and she's on the International Student Admissions Committee. And as she says, most importantly, she helped navigate her own children's college search, her 3 daughters, one of whom just got to the Final Four in field hockey yesterday, or Saturday. So we welcome Susie. Thanks for being here.
My voice is a little cracky at times. It's because I cheered through 2 games Saturday and Sunday. University of Maryland beat Duke. We were the underdog, and we did it. So very excited to get to drive to Louisville, Kentucky on Friday. So I spent a lot of time in the car. I guess I was invited because of my length of tenure in college admission. So this is my 35th year. Perhaps it was because I have gray hair. Perhaps it's because I have 3 daughters who actually have gone through the process. And My one at Maryland is a senior, so I am almost done with my college parenting, I guess. By next June, everyone will be out and I will have done it. So my husband and I are looking forward to that too. But anyway, so what I am here to do is, number one, just kind of encourage all of you. How many of you have gone through the process with an older child? Okay. Oh, quite a few of you, okay. What I have found in my daughter's searches is that each child is definitely different. Each child definitely has their own interests, passions, ideas of what they want to have in a college. I had one daughter go to a very small school, and then obviously I have another daughter who is at University of Maryland. So would it have been a good fit for my daughter who went to Skidmore to go to Maryland? No, she would have been overwhelmed. Would my daughter who is at Maryland like to have gone to a smaller school? No, she really wanted that big school feel. So every process is going to be different, even if you've gone through it before. Everyone's going to have a little bit of a different focus in their process. But at this stage, I think what's important for you all to know is that, like Sarah said, your sons are in a great place. They are being challenged academically, and certainly from the admissions standpoint, that is by far the most important thing that we are looking for. And if you speak to the 100 of colleges that come to Gilman every year, and you ask them what is most important in the college application process, every one of them is going to say academic program, transcript, how the student is doing in the classes, but the rigor that they're taking and how they're being pushed and how they're being prepared academically. So coming out of Gilman, I think all admissions people know that your sons are being pushed. They're being asked to read a lot. They're being asked to write papers. They're being asked to, participate in classroom discussions and form their own perspectives and form their own ideas. And that's what colleges want to see. We want our students to come into being integrated into the classroom experience and really being able to add to the academic life on campus. So first and foremost, hopefully your sons are doing well, pushing themselves. Now we also understand that sometimes 14-year-old boys just don't get it in that first year. They are adjusting to high school. They're adjusting to the amount of work they have to do. And they are seeing a trend in their grades. So encourage, don't harp on your son maybe not getting an A on that test. No, it's a process, and college admissions officers are really keen at looking at the trend that a student will see in their classes. So if ninth grade wasn't their best year, but this year they're doing better, be encouraged. Help them realize that that's good. There will be places and colleges that your son will be able to get into that are very wonderful for them, that there is that fit that they have academically and they'll do really well. But at the same time, we don't want students who are only worrying about their grades, who are only worrying about studying. All colleges have lots of opportunities outside of class, and to me, I think a lot of learning takes place outside of the class. Your leadership skills, I call them like life skills. Organizing your time, getting to meetings, keeping to a schedule. These are all things that as people are applying for jobs or graduate schools, that's what employers want to see, that I can assign you a job. I can give you a research project to do, and you'll complete that. And so these things that the students are doing outside of class are also really important. And it doesn't mean that every minute of every day your son has to be doing something. We also want students to be teenagers. They need to have some downtime. Our director of admissions, Ann Fleming-Brown, is wonderful at telling families that we don't want students who are feeling they need to take 6 AP classes in junior year and 6 AP classes in senior year and never sleep and never have time to just relax. We want students who are able to work hard, but also have fun and know that there are things that they'll be doing in life that bring them enjoyment. And so we want that balance in the academic and the personal programs. So know that that's important too in the application process. Transcripts are important. We want to make sure that the students that we're admitting are going to be successful academically at our school. We don't want to bring in students who are setting up to fail. But at the same time, we also want those students to be coming to campus and adding to our campus life. Especially at a school like Union, we have 2,200 students. We want students to be involved. We know that that sense of community is one of the reasons that students are selecting. And I'm sure at Gilman, you probably selected Gilman, one, for the academic programs, but also for that sense of school spirit that your sons are enjoying here, and that involvement that they have, the relationships that they have with their teachers and their coaches. That's something that certainly is important, so we want that balance, and I think that's really important. The last thing that I'm just trying to say is, as parents, be encouraging at this stage. I'm sure you all are. I'm sure that, obviously you all love your children and things like that. But really, start this process knowing that there are many wonderful colleges and universities across the country and across the world. Your son will end up someplace that is great for him. In my 35 years in admissions, I have had very few students who end up someplace that they don't absolutely love. You don't hear about that many students transferring because they don't enjoy the institution they're in. So know that as you go through the process, as you're visiting different schools, as you are learning about different opportunities at these schools, let your son take the rein and really give him that sense that it's your decision. It's going to be one of the biggest decisions that they make, but it's his decision. And what you might want for your son may not necessarily be what he is looking for. One of the biggest lessons I learned as I was going through the process with my 3 daughters was I had to keep my mouth closed, because there were schools we got to, and I had my impression of the school. And I would look at my daughters, and you could see that their eyes were sparkling. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to keep my comments to myself because this school is really connecting with my daughter. Probably the hardest thing to do as a parent is to not say anything, not put your 2 cents in. And so I really tried to sit back and just drive and take advantage of going on the tours and things like that, and you'll be amazed. I think what we see most in our office is parents who come in saying, can I go back to college? Because let me tell you, every school has fantastic facilities, fantastic opportunities for students, and you do kind of look back thinking, wow, why didn't I ever go on a study abroad? Or wow, why didn't I do that when I was in school? Take advantage of these free concerts that, oh my gosh, if I was, outside of college, I would have to be paying for. There are so many opportunities, and I think that is really important for you to just keep your mouth closed a little and let your son, as I said, take the lead on that. I guess the one other thing that the college counselors did a good job, so I'm just trying to touch on some of the things that they said and maybe give you a little more insight. Testing is a huge concern, point of stress for students and families. I do want to emphasize that there are probably more than 500 or 600 schools that are test optional. I have 3 daughters. The first 2 were not good test takers. I will tell you that right off the bat. So I loved schools that did not require testing. Union is a test optional school. From the admissions standpoint, I love working in a school that is test optional because I know we are able to enroll students who know how to study, who know what they have to do to be successful in college, who will work hard to be successful, but don't necessarily test well on that Saturday morning in May or June. Most schools will super score testing. So, as they were saying, your sons will probably take the SATs or the ACTs more than once. Most schools will always take the highest of each subsection. So that gives a student an opportunity if they, were feeling really powerful and strong in math one day and the critical reading sections another day. We will blend those scores. SATs get blended, ACTs get blended. We don't cross over between SATs and ACTs, but know that as your son is taking the various tests. Biggest thing the student can do, your son can do in testing, read. Read. As was mentioned, read things outside of the interest. Don't worry if he's reading Sports Illustrated or a magazine or short stories or a scientific journal, whatever it be. The more you read, the better you'll be able to decipher the critical reading sections, and your vocabulary grows if you read more. So certainly that's something that's important. Just have a few notes here. I would like to emphasize that you all and your sons have the advantage that you have a great college counseling office. Use them, listen to them. When they form the list for your sons come next January or February, they put schools on the list for a reason. They know your sons, they know their academic background. They might push them to look at schools that you had never considered before. But certainly take that seriously and use them. If you go to a school and something strikes you at that school, turn to your college counselors if you have a question, because they know the schools, but they also know all of us on the admissions staff. So they will have a contact at every one of the schools that your sons are looking at. And they are wonderful. We know that we can call them if we have any questions on the transcript or anything about the Gilman experience. And I think they also know that they can be in touch with anyone in the admissions office. So listen to them. You have a great resource here. The other thing that I want to mention and just emphasize is, as you're starting this process, it is a great idea to just get to various college campuses. I always say, try to get to a large school, get to a small school, get to a school in a city, get to a school that has a distinct campus, get to a school that is kind of in a small town. As you're driving places as a family, drive through a campus. It just will expose your son to a number of different things. And don't go into this process with a preconceived list of schools. Okay, these are the schools we're going to look at. Because I can truly tell you, every school, every college, every university has opportunities available for the students. And if your son is going to be someone who will take advantage of those opportunities, they're going to have a fantastic experience. You probably have all read, all the different reports that, you look at the top CEOs of top companies, and, the list of colleges that they all attended are enormous. The list is huge. They are not all coming from, a top 20 school in the rankings. If you make that experience your own, if you take advantage of all the opportunities available at the various colleges, your son's going to have a fantastic experience and be very successful moving on to whether it be a graduate program or going into a job. So I guess the final say, be encouraging, be supportive, and have fun. It's a fun process, and know that all of your sons are going to end up someplace, and someplace that will be a great, that will allow them to have a fantastic experience and to kind of further grow as a person. So I think that's the bottom line. Don't get stressed. Don't show your stress, because that then makes your son more stressed. And this should be an exciting process, because I promise you, everyone will end up at a school that is a great match or a great fit for them. So those are my comments. I'm going to answer questions.
So we really thought that many of you probably have lots of questions, and this is a great opportunity to ask really any question that you might have in harboring or any around any part of the process about the application or getting started or whatever's on your mind. It's always hard to be the first one,
Yes.
but there you go.
So, you mentioned you're a non-test school. And
Yes.
you get essays from junior senior. Is it typical for other schools that are also test schools to have data? I heard from the freshman year also. Are you looking for, like, in your Common App, your experiences or essays or things done in that year as well? Or is it all sophomores and juniors?
So all colleges will look at the academic program from 9th grade or freshman, first year or whatever, all the way through. Every school, and this is why you need to visit the websites of the various colleges, or as you visit, ask specific questions. Okay, what do you require? For example, we are a test optional school, and it's simply a checkbox on the common application or the coalition application saying, I don't want my testing considered. We don't require a student to submit any additional essays, papers, anything like that. So every school is going to be different in that case, in what they are requiring. The data that we're getting early on are basically the grades that a student has taken, the courses that the student has taken. So we're not looking for any specific things from 9th and 10th grade beyond the transcript. If a school is asking for a graded paper, they will typically want it from junior or very beginning of senior year. And I think hopefully that benefits your son because hopefully their grading has improved from 9th grade to junior year. But we also want to have the most recent things. Just like with college, with teacher recommendations, most of what we, the college side, would want would be teachers who have taught you more recently. That doesn't mean that if you had a teacher in 9th grade and have them again junior year, the junior year, that would be great. We don't necessarily want a teacher recommendation from 9th grade with no other teacher recommendation. Again, your son probably has grown over the years, and so we want to know him as a student now, more recently. So I would say junior, senior year again with the teacher recommendations. I hope that answers your questions. 9th and 10th.
Can I have a little on that?
Sure.
So what is your criteria for evaluating that student that is coming from Gilman, who might have just taken one AP and has, excellent grades, to the student who's coming from another place that's taken like 5 APs because they offer APs? Because you're only looking at a transcript, right?
We are looking at the transcript in association with the school profile. So when we get an application, we will get the transcript, we will get the council recommendation, teacher recommendations, and the school profile. So we are comparing a student to what opportunities they have within their school. So if a school offers 20 APs and the student is not taking any, that sends up a red flag. If a school only offers 3 APs and the student's taking 1 AP, well, they're taking a rigorous program within their school. Many independent schools are moving away from the AP curriculum, so fewer and fewer are offering AP courses. And so we're then looking at the profile to say, well, what does the school designate as the most rigorous classes within a department? So we're looking at it in conjunction with that profile.
I maybe ask both of you guys a question. When we look at, we talk about grade point average and percentages, I'm guessing you just look at a Gilman student on a percentage basis probably. Because from what I understand what the transcript looks like, it's just 1 year, full grade for the end of the year. And that'll increase as we get further along the line. But am I right on that's how they're going to see it
That's
when the
correct.
transcript gets passed over? And then I'm guessing from the college side, you won't really be changing that into a grade point average. You'll be saying, oh, this kid is a 92 or a 95 or a 89. Is that fair to think about that way?
Yes, so schools are going to look at grade point averages differently. Some colleges will recalculate every transfer from every school onto like a 100-point scale, which is what we do at Union. Other schools will not recalculate anything and will just take whatever is showing up on the transcript as the grade point average. But that again is where the admissions person who's reading the school, reading the applications from the school, needs to understand the school, and that's where the profile comes into play. I can't emphasize enough how much the profile means. You know, so at Gilman, if, you know, the average in a class is a 80, not a like 85 or 90 like some other schools, well, we have to understand that an 80 coming out of Gilman is a solid average grade for a student coming from the school. And so most colleges have the person who's traveling in the area, who becomes the expert of the schools in that area, be the primary reader of those applications. So as I bring Gilman students into a committee meeting, I need to be the advocate saying, you know, don't look down on this person who may not have that 95 average that we're seeing from this public school on Long Island. You know, an 85 average at Gilman that's a good average, and we would love to have this again. So I then become the advocate of the students from the schools that I visit, and I think that's how a majority of colleges do it. Maybe some that have the 50,000 applications may not have that luxury, but when you're looking at private colleges, I would say 95% of the schools read that way. That we know the school, we know the grading system, that shows up on the profile that we'll get, and we're going to be looking at in association with that.
So this is our responsibility as your son's college counselor, is to put your son's experience into context and to advocate for your son, and to help each college understand the rigor of this curriculum. And as you know, it's somewhat complex in that we don't do advanced placement in the humanities here. We have this amazing coordinate program where these boys have access to such a depth of curriculum. So that's our job in this profile, in the school report that we provide, and in the letter of recommendation, to put it all into context of how hard your son's been working, and even down to sometimes, you probably know, there's certain teachers who are known to be very exacting graders. That's the kind of level of detail that will be in the letter sometimes. If you take a class with certain, I'm learning from these people, I will not name them yet, but I've just gone through the first quarter grades, and there's a pretty clear pattern of the teachers who are really tough graders and ask a lot of your boys. So we will make that point. Also, sometimes, as Susie pointed out, sometimes that 14-year-old brain hasn't quite kind of those frontal lobe thing. Not that, there's schools that want to see a really good grades all 4 years for sure. But they also understand that, in ninth grade, some boys are just, losing their backpack every day and their planner, if they have one. So, they're getting that stuff together, and they understand that. I think what we want to keep remembering, and sometimes this is very hard to do as a mother of 2 boys myself, that they are kids. And we're asking a lot of them, and we ask a lot of them at Gilman School for sure. So there's that fine balance of constantly, pushing and supporting and pulling, probably.
I have 2 questions. The first is for you. When the transcript goes through, does the weighted average, is that the average
Yes.
that's given?
Yes, and you will see a copy of that. We will send that out over the summer before the junior year, just to double check, making sure everything's in order. It's what you expect it to be.
And then my second question is, can you just walk us through that when you get, Susie Jones' application, what happens to it? And how is it gone, what is the process?
Great question. Good question. And we are starting to read our early decision applications on Thursday, so it's fresh in my mind here. So now through Common App, you have an audience? Yes. Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't, okay. Through the Common Application, and we also accept the Coalition application, and through Naviance, which is the almost the system that connects the high schools with the colleges. That's how 99% of our applications come in. So where in past years we had a lot of processing to do on an application, now it's basically all automated. So the application comes into our application system, and immediately, application is loaded, transcripts loaded, counselor recommendations are loaded, teacher recommendations are loaded. So those files are becoming complete much more rapidly now, which is all good news for your sons. We don't lose pieces of paper. They don't get stuck on top of a file cabinet like they used to. And we don't have that panic at the end of every year going, oh my gosh, we've lost this application. Check your chunks of the card, check your, it was terrible when I first started. Now everything's online, so we have that immediately. So what will happen is I will have my docket, so any application from Maryland, for instance, will be put into my docket. I'll know I have these completed applications to read. I will be, opening up a file. I read the application, I'll read the essay, I'll evaluate the transcript, look at the counselor recommendations, read the teacher recommendations, any other additional information the student has added, and we'll be making notes as I go through on every front. So, make notes on all these different pieces that I just mentioned. Look at the activities they've been involved with, how they've spent their free time, how they've spent their summers, all sorts of things like that. And then I will make a recommendation as to a decision that should be made. And at Union, we have a rubric. If a student has these types of this type of academic background, this type of testing, if they have included testing, and I feel like this student would be a good academic fit for Union, then I can make a preliminary recommendation. It then goes to be read by a second person in the office, and that will vary who it will be. It could be the director, it could be our vice president. I may be on the fence with someone, so I might ask another one of my colleagues to kind of look at it. What are your thoughts about this student? And then some students are just passed through with a decision. And those are typically the clearly admissible, clearly should be denied. But a majority of students are going to be discussed further, sent to committee. And so at Union, a majority of our committees, like we split our staff, so we'll have 5 people in one room, 5 people in another room. I'll be the one presenting all the applications from Maryland, so I am always in that conversation as the decisions are being made, and then that decision will be finalized. And then it's a process because we go through this, we read. Last year we received 6,600 applications, so we read the 6,600 applications. But then come early part of March, our vice president does all sorts of numbers, and he's like, oh, we need more men, and so we go back and we might review applications. So most of the applications are looked at least 2 times. Many are looked at 3, 4, 5 different times from different people on the staff, depending on how that student fits into the rubric that we have. But I always try to emphasize to students the time that they put into the application, the time that they put into writing their essay. We all read those, and we spend a lot of time learning about the student. We love to get to know our applicants, and again, we're a small school, so we're not dealing with 50,000 applications. But we really appreciate the opportunities to get to know the students. So, you know, when I was here a couple weeks ago, I met with 2 young men. I mean, it was really a nice conversation. I feel like I know them a little better. So as they apply, they were both seniors, so as they apply, you know, I feel like I have connected with them. We recommend interviews. Not all schools do, but we do, because we really like the opportunity to get to sit and talk with someone. And that also becomes a factor in our admissions decision. You know, we'll talk to that student and we'll say, oh my gosh, this student would be great on our campus. You know, so that can be weighed in. And so all these things are factored in this application review process. It happens from, you know, mid-November all the way through, and our decisions go out late March. So all that time is spent just reviewing and re-reviewing applications and really getting to know those students.
Can you tell me about one of the essays that you've read that you still remember, and why you still remember?
Okay. It's really interesting because I think that is one area where students think, I have to write that perfect essay, or I have to have that you know, life-changing experience. The essay should be an opportunity for your son to tell us something that we might not learn about in other places in the application. Obviously, if they had a fantastic community service experience in Costa Rica, that's wonderful, but you know, tell us what you learned from that. He should tell us what he learned from that and why it was so special. But the essay that I always remember, and it still kind of gnaws at me because I'll explain to that in a second, was a young woman wrote an essay, and she attended a small school in New England. It was an independent school, and her brother was also in the same class as she was. They weren't twins, but one of them had, you know, repeated a year or something. I think the brother had repeated a year. She was a swimmer. He played other sports, and he challenged her to a swim race that he could beat her. Now, this is so typical of an older brother, you know, like, I can beat you in anything, you know. And the whole essay was just the build-up to this race and how it became more than just the girl and the boy racing. It was a whole school thing. People were taking sides, they were making signs, this whole process. It was very well written. Immediately I was into reading it, and I think that's what I love. Like, catch me in those first 2 sentences and you got me for reading this. What still gnaws at me is she never told me who won. Oh my gosh, she, you know, and she was even had me in the pool with her, and you know, and we went to touch the wall. I'm like, oh my God! But I remember that essay because it was great. It was just, you know, it showed me her passion for swimming. It told me about her relationship with her brother, which was really a close relationship. They could kid each other and things like that. It told me about the environment she was coming from, this school, that she loved the school spirit and how everyone got behind one or the other of them. So I learned so much about her through this essay, and it was a simple event that happened in her life. It wasn't life-changing. She probably doesn't even remember it now, but it was a great essay, and I think the writing of an essay is really important. I'm sure that you all read the essay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You know, and so that's the other thing. As your son's going through it, you know, make sure that he is editing the essay. I think there are great essays, and there are very few poor essays. And the only reason an essay is poor is because they haven't been edited and the writing is poor. The topics, you know, we read all sorts of things. I have read about, you know, computer science research or chemistry research that, you know, as a history major is like, whew, I don't even know what you're talking about, but it was well written. And I have heard, you know, read about things like that. I read another essay that I loved, and it was about, you know, it was actually a young man, you know, pair of sneakers and all the different things he had done in those sneakers. I mean, it was a great essay. You know, again, I learned a lot about him. But really the only poor essays are the essays that the student didn't take the time to edit. I have a great story. When I was at Lehigh, I read, again, a great essay, and this is a little story about spell check, which you have to watch spell check. If you spell a different word, it doesn't catch it. So it was an essay about how he and his father every year would go on a camping trip, and it was just a great bonding experience. Again, I learned a lot about him. I learned about his love of the outdoors. I learned about his, his relationship with his father. That's the last line of the essay, and that is why I enjoyed the camping trips to go peasant hunting with my father. I'm like, peasant hunting? Don't think that that's legal, so I mean, I'm assuming he meant pheasant hunting, I'll just clarify that. But, it's the type of thing. Obviously, no one read that. No one proofed it for him. And, you can ask your son, do you want me to proof your essay? And they will probably say, no, I don't want you reading my essay. But have them, have their college counselor read it, have their English teacher read it, have a friend read it, have an older sibling read it. My oldest daughter is a journalism major, and so both the daughters were like, okay, Megan, put your journalism knowledge to work and proof my essay. Make sure that I have all the right commas and things like that. So anyone can proof it, and I think that as I said, your son's friends, they all probably write very well, but you need someone else to be proofing these to make sure that you're not misusing a word. Yeah, exactly. Over here.
So that sort of goes to the question I have for you. So how involved does Jill encourage parents to be in the school application process, or do you encourage the boys to take the lead in? How does it work?
Yeah, so how involved do we encourage parents to be in the process? It's a great question. Ideally, we would love for your sons to take full charge of this process. This is a huge transition in their lives from being a boy to becoming a man, and that would be in my ideal world. However, we don't live in that world, and so we need you. I mean, this is a family decision. This is a family process, and I think it's a hard thing of letting go. Letting your son and trusting that he's going to do this when there's so much at stake. So I think your son, and it'll come down to, it'll really put a real spotlight on your relationship and where you have stresses and where you don't. But know that the college counselors are very involved, and we love this opportunity to work really closely and make sure that nobody falls through the cracks, that nothing is left undone that needs to be done. And I love to, when I talk to kids, tell them this is a great assignment for your mom or dad, because I think the thing that worries us the most is when we don't know if something's getting done. So we need to create, a spreadsheet, a checklist, something that we can all see, and it's posted to the door, and this is what you have done, and this is what remains to be done.
So something like that, is that communicated to the parents if something
Yes.
is not, okay. So
Yeah.
it's not as if the boys are on their own and
That's probably not the best idea, but we would love it if they were, because after all, it's really amazing. Having gone through this myself, you have this child under your roof for 18 years, and then all of a sudden they're off in college, and there really aren't, they're gone from your view, and they're responsible for making sure the laundry gets done, they get to class, and all those things. So this is such a transition time to help guide them through, but it's so stressful because this is a time where, they're kind of pushing away, and you're trying to pull them back because, this is your last year with them under your roof, and this is such an important decision. So we will give you handbooks, and we have these newsletters, and we'll have coffees, and we have lots of moments to make sure that we're all communicating, and which is why we're doing this coffee today. It just comes down to communication. We want this to be an open book. I think sometimes in this process it feels like it takes place behind a veil, and we kind of want to pull that curtain back and make sure that everybody knows what is involved and how the decisions are made, and how do you even get to the place where you're visiting the schools to
so each boy is assigned a counselor.
Correct.
Office, and
Yeah.
that would be the point person.
Yeah.
So you got my son who likes to do everything on his own. If I just needed to check in.
Absolutely.
Thing
I love to channel parents, so if you're having tension with your child, and, you've asked him 10 times if you could see his essay, or, is it even getting done, then call your college counselor, and I'm more than happy to say, oh, no, trust me, he's really doing a great job, or, no, we really need to join forces. And then we also work closely with advisors, too, to, if a boy hasn't made an appointment to come see us, or isn't following through. So, yeah, that's really a point of anxiety for sure.
And I think more and more colleges, we always copy the parent on an email we're sending to the student. So if it's an email saying, you're still missing, this part of your application, we copy the parent because we do know that you can help, make it complete or help.
Yeah, so I don't know if my colleagues do differently. The way I'll do it is I'll first try and communicate with the boy. If I don't hear back or he doesn't follow through, then I might copy the advisor. If that doesn't work, then I'll bring in the parent. So, bottom line is we don't want anything to not get done. Is that a double negative? I think so. But we want them to, be successful. And but we also want them to take responsibility. So. Yeah.
You talked about a list of colleges that are giving out in the beginning, junior year, or something like that. So based on each child, so how does that happen?
Well, I've yet to go through this for Gilman, so I'll call upon my colleagues. But the way I like to see it, this is not, in the old days, my day, I would say, it was sort of like, oh, Sarah, you are a good student, therefore you will apply to these schools. It doesn't work like that any longer. It really is a real education on both of our parts, and including your son. So I really, that's the thing that stresses me personally. What stresses me the most is when there's an expectation that I will meet your son once or twice and then say, here, now apply to these colleges. I really see that as a really part of our relationship and our collaboration to help figure out where those schools are. Once I start to get to know your son and know what kind of student he is, what his interests are, maybe, does he have family in Southern California, and that's something the family might consider, then we will put together some suggestions, but we're never saying this is where you should apply. I'm always open to hearing, all my life I've dreamed of going to Princeton, and my grandfather went to Princeton. I absolutely am going to encourage that in the very beginning, but also with the caveat that you understand now that, when your grandfather went to Princeton, they were accepting 50% of the applicants, and now they're accepting, under 6. So that's the hard part of our job, is to try and temper it with some of that reality that's happening now in the college landscape.
Okay, so do the students come with their ideas?
Sure, absolutely.
Or is it like, okay, are parents involved in it?
Yes,
or
of course.
How
Yeah. So that's how we build that list, is really, it's your thoughts, it's our thoughts, and the students' thoughts. I would love to say, how about, so here's what, I used to do this exercise with my students, the very first college seminar we used to do, say, all right, where do you guys want to go to school? And someone said, I want to go to a good school. Oh, of course. What is a good school? It's a school I've heard of. How many schools have you heard of? And then I get my classes to describe how many schools have they heard of. And they've heard of the Ivy League, and then, how many can you name? How many schools are there, actually four-year schools in the United States? There's over 2,000 four-year schools just in the United States alone. So our job is to really kind of broaden the view and open up their mind around some really great schools that maybe they haven't heard of. It's interesting for me moving from New England to the Mid-Atlantic. The view here is more focused clearly on the Mid-Atlantic schools, but kids are looking all over the country. And so to kind of open up their mind to see if it's a school they haven't heard of, but it's actually a great school. So it's definitely a process. There's never a list that we give you and say this is where your son should apply. It totally evolves, and oftentimes, I think I'll create a list in February, and come September that list is completely different because you've gone to visit, you cross schools off, you add schools in. And we'll give you resources to help kind of build that list. There's some really great guides that I love. And of course, once you get into Naviance, as Susie mentioned, which is this web-based program we use, there's a search engine there. There's search engines you can use online already. And as Anna pointed out, we're happy to start talking to you, as we can in the next, over the course of the next months too. You guys want to add anything to that list?
There are two formal questions here also that
Yeah,
really help
yeah.
us. At the very beginning, one goes to your son, one goes to you. So those are helpful in terms of like, what regions are we looking at, what's the size, what are your academic interests, all those things are considered.
Yeah.
Is there a recommended number of schools that may, we're having that ongoing conversation with our sons, if they have an idea of, they're throwing 10, 12 schools out there, is there a recommended number that you try to help them kind of hone in on?
What do you guys have a recommend? I mean, I like to say 7 or 8, but 10.
Sure, I can take that. So I like the number 6 to 9 schools. So that is 2 or 3 in each of these 3 categories. 2 or 3 reach, 2 or 3 50-50 admits, 2 or 3 likely admits. I can tell how important that school is to your son based on the quality of the application. So if it's his top choice school, the essays, the school-specific essays, if they have them, are going to be really well done. If it's your 12th, 13th, 14th favorite school, it's not going to be well done. As a 17 or 18-year-old, it's not going to be. And so a student can do about 6 to 9 really good applications. And that's what I've found over the years. So if you're looking for a specific number, go in that range. So 2 or 3 in each of those categories.
All right, I think you had your hand up all morning.
She actually asked the question I was going to ask first, which is thank you. And to follow up on that is, starting out, you have a fair idea of what you want to do. Your son has a fair idea of what he wants to do, but you're not certain. Is there advantage to going to a school that you absolutely know you will never go to, just to get your feet in the water and get a sense of how the process works, or is that tend to not?
To just visit or to actually do an
Yeah.
interview and things like that?
Visit.
Just to visit? Well, I guess I would say that, no. I guess my view is you think you would never go to that school, but you might go visit and say, wow, they have a lot of opportunities and a lot of things that I really do like. Yeah, you don't know, especially at the beginning stages, you don't know exactly what might be those factors that are going to, oh my gosh, this is it. I wouldn't, take a week off of vacation, go to every school that you don't think you're going to like, that would be, but, as you're driving through, if you want to stop and, drive around the campus or, take a tour, which will, take an hour, it might be a good way to confirm, oh, this isn't the type of school I want, and sometimes that's helpful too. You can eliminate like a number of schools because of those types of things. So I would say, the exposure to a number of different types of schools is very good at the beginning.
And the other question I want to get into real quick, is there information sources that are kind of behind the scenes, like not quite like the newsweek reviews and the websites? Is there places that you can go to where you can start getting a feel for what a campus is like before you make a visit? You kind of get a leg up on getting that sense of what the school is like.
I love the FISC guide, FISKE, because I believe that the author does that for you. He pulls out kind of the vibe on campus, kind of the energy, and I think that's a way to, I always say to the kids, I don't remember that expression, let your fingers do the walking. Kids never know what I'm talking about, but the old phone book thing. But yeah, let your fingers do the walking before you spend all that money and time to go visit so many schools and use that guide to.
Is there another guy that's out there?
That's my favorite. Do you guys have any other favorites?
If you want, if you were looking for like a behind the scenes account of like the review process, the gatekeepers is a pretty interesting.
What I'm
thing.
actually thinking about is a discussion board. Is there a discussion?
There is, but I don't know if.
I do not recommend it.
Yeah.
I think I always tell kids, do not go to College Confidential. Guess what they do? They go directly to College Confidential, but it's dangerous. It's a lot of strangers who may have an axe to grind. I really don't think it's helpful. I think those are the kinds of things that really fuel the anxiety and create havoc, but there you go. It's out there. Yeah.
Do we still have a scattergram? We have that.
Yes, on Naviance, yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so you get access to that when you're a junior?
That's right.
My
Yeah.
question would be, does it make sense to have the kids as sophomores if they think they want this, hey, this is what it is, this is what, kind of earlier to say, hey, if you really want to do this or this, you need to be thinking these types of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think something that I think we as a staff would love to sit down and talk about, and I would be more than happy if your son wanted to come and see me, and I would sit with him and show him the scattergram. And so for those of you who don't know, so Naviance is this amazing, brilliant system that this college counselor invented about 15 or so years ago, and now he's a multimillionaire. Not many college counselors can say that. It's true. And so it's a database, and we have all the Gilman history of where kids have applied and where they've been accepted, waitlisted, or denied. And so it kind of is a roadmap for us as college counselors to kind of predict as best as we are able. We think someone can be admitted to a certain school. And that said, nobody is a plot on a graph, right? So the graph only has a GPA and SAT score or ACT score. So there's so much more to that picture, clearly, and that's where we have to be very careful. We have to be very gentle with these boys, and they're this is why it is a stressful process, because they can be very fragile, and we want to push them, like I said, and encourage them at the same time. And I think to your question about visiting a school that may be way out of someone's league per se, like maybe that inspires a kid to work really hard and know that they're, as Susie pointed out, the number one thing every school is looking at is that transcript and the rigor. So you've got Gilman, and you probably have the rigor now, and then the grades are very important. But how do they know that there really is a school for them, where they're going to really thrive and blossom and just grow? So I'd be happy to do that. But I think we don't want to do it too soon, just because that's the tight rope that we are walking, trying to know what's right for each student. Yeah.
I'm just curious to find out, what do our kids know right now? Because you're talking about it's good for them to read outside the curriculum and all these things, but are you guys telling them that? Because if I told them, I'm not sure the message.
Yeah, Matt.
Take that. So the advisor system is important here, so communicating much of this to them. Also in 9th grade, your son went through freshman 5th with Dr. Mo, and one of those dates in the winter is a What Counts presentation that we go through with each of those freshman 5th, about a quarter of the classes in each of these sections. And so we'll share what counts in college admissions. We'll show them a transcript. We'll show them what colleges are looking at when they review an application. And then tomorrow there's a floor meeting for sophomores. We will give them a snapshot of, hey, if your parents asked you about college last night, this is why. And so we'll share that with them in the floor meeting tomorrow. So the floor meeting, the freshman 5th, and then the advisors for 9th and 10th graders is the core of where we share this information.
And I think just by virtue of being at Gilman School, for sure, in many ways, that's the one message I want you to take away, is that they're really in the right place, doing the right things already. Just by doing their homework, coming to school, getting involved, trying new things, and using their time wisely.
The college tour was out, is that available for sophomores?
Yes.
If they have a sibling, it's just a year behind or something, is available?
So your son's in 9th grade, or the
I
other
have
son?
a 10th grader, and I have a 9th grader at RPCS.
So this is,
Is it strictly?
it's just Gilman boys, and it's just for rising juniors and rising seniors.
Right, so sophomores, or so the sophomores.
So your sons, yes, will be.
So in this process, is there any connection with Gilman alumni who are in those schools and you guys talk to them, like a connection?
And I missed that last part.
And when the student is approaching certain schools, filling up applications, etc., can you get connected to Gilman alumni who are there in those schools?
after school. I find that communication with those alums is the best communication. Someone who left there 25 years ago, I think is probably less informative to the boy. So yeah, we do that. I do that pretty frequently. Share with them students who are there. So while they're visiting, connect with John, right? So yeah, we have that information. I have to share.
If you're not able to make a coffee, will you email things like these out so that?
Yes, absolutely, yeah, yeah. So, as we said, yeah, communication is really key, so you'll be getting a lot of it. And I think as Anna pointed out, if you're not getting those communications, you wouldn't know if you weren't getting them, but now you do. But I think sometimes it can get caught in your spam filter, so.
And also there's to we're actually videotaping this as we do for all of our programs, so we'll send it out. So you can also watch either if you weren't able to make it or if you did, just refresh your memory or share with maybe a spouse or partner that can make it. So those emails will always go out with also any handouts. And if anyone missed handouts, we do have them on this back table.
So you mentioned a lot of emphasis in the beginning on school profile. So that school profile gets created and keeps getting updated. What's the process of that?
Of the school profile being updated? So that comes from us. So that's something that we do every summer to provide a profile of Gilman School, of the curriculum that's offered here, and then a profile of the class kind of academically, where they.
So how you make sure that, one is that it should reflect Gilman effectively, other is it should be comparing very well with other schools, because they're trying to compete as far as profile is concerned, so that becomes a basic information.
I mean, it's really a reflection of Gilman, and because our students are so strong and our curriculum is so rigorous, I think it's a very strong profile. But I think at the next level then is the relationship that we have with the admissions officers that is a personal relationship with so many schools around the country and so many schools that come and visit. So in many ways, certainly at a school like Union, which is a small liberal arts school that reads these applications holistically, it really is about the relationships that we form with the admissions office. It's about the relationship that we form with your son as well, which is why it's so important that they come and see their college counselor. Sometimes there's a question about having an outside counselor, and I don't have any problem with someone having an outside counselor. Sometimes that can be helpful to you and your relationship with your son and getting things done. But it's really important to remember that the college counselor at Gilman is the person writing the letter of recommendation. So it's really important that your son spends a good amount of time with us so that we can do a very good job in advocating for him.
How do you know? So along with that, I know that the admissions counselors are regional, right? You have a region that you sort of look into.
In most cases, yes.
So you're familiar with the schools. But on Gilman's side, are college counselors also regional? Like, do you have, some of you have relationships with the schools in New England and are connected with the colleges really well? Or is it just...
No, it's really our responsibility to be as knowledgeable about as many schools as we possibly can and having relationships with every school around the country. It's a very big job. We also do a lot of traveling. We go to a lot of conferences. So when we're not, at school during the summer and other downtime, we're spending time visiting schools ourselves.
Do students get assigned a counselor in their junior year?
Yes, in January of their junior year, they'll be assigned a counselor, and it's our responsibility too. As much as we ask the boys to make the appointment and come and see us, but if they're not doing that, then we'll make sure they do so, because we, as much as you are concerned about our ability to advocate for them. I think there was one over here.
What's the ratio of boys to counselors?
We each have about 30 or so on our caseload, which is an amazing ratio. Yeah.
How do you determine the counselor for the boy?
So I believe the process last year was the students were given an opportunity to select a counselor. So if they were a JV golfer or a ultimate frisbee or took English with, I guess they wouldn't take English with Mr. Baker, take English with Ms. Bowensby, they could select that counselor and then we would assign them if they don't.
But how do you decide if my student doesn't have a relationship with any of those counselors, how would you decide which is the best fit?
I guess we would have knowledge among ourselves about your son and that he might get along best with Mr. Baker, and we would assign him to Mr. Baker.
And Mr. Cubitt goes over the list.
Right, we get, yeah.
So we get input, but
Pretty rare that, and I'm in your form share, so I like look at every junior's grade and every junior's comp, I mean,
if your son doesn't know who we are, we probably know who they are. I don't want to brag, but we're pretty good at our job. And so we get to know.
And I would just add, sorry, one other piece of that it's really important for any of you and your students to know that the four of us work very much as a team. So we do, of course, want to work with students. So many of the sophomores I'm teaching now, I will be their college counselor later. We're always a college counselor for our own advisees, for example. But I think I just want to underscore that the four of us work so much as a unit. The boys can come see any of us with questions. So all the time, I'll have boys that come and say, oh, Mr. Baker, the door was closed. Can you help me with blah, blah, blah? And of course I do that. We also meet as a staff and review all of the application lists for the boys. We review the prospective college application list for the boys. It's not unusual. A boy might share an essay with a college counselor that's not his own because he wants to get another opinion. And so I think that one-on-one relationship is super important, but just know that we as a staff all support all the boys and are in constant contact with each other by email, by text, by G-chat, with questions. And so we all really support each other in that way too. Thanks.
Another question? Oh, yeah.
Week in and week out, say starting the junior year, you're going to get really involved in making your decisions, so on and so forth. How much time, week in and week out, do you expect somebody to spend? Like 4 or 5 hours a week, a couple hours a week, a full day?
In the spring?
Yeah, as you start really getting into this process of making a decision.
Yeah, I would say in the spring of the junior year is when you'll be spending some time hopefully visiting some schools, and then the early summertime is a good time to start to really get a really strong sense of what list you have. Parents would love their children to finish their essays over the summer. That rarely happens, so that tends to happen. And one of the things I've observed is essays I read in the spring of the junior year are never anywhere near as well written as they are in the fall of the senior year. And I attribute that to really the brain development that takes place and the maturity that goes on. It's remarkable the changes you'll see in your children over the next couple of years. And we see that just in that from, May of this junior year to September.
Is this something that you're going to be spending time on regularly? Like, is there a bit of time you spend every day on this, or is it a few hours a week, or is it something you just spend time on once or twice a month?
Well, I would say, you'll know your child and how they operate. Obviously a little bit all the time would probably be a nice way to go, but some of them will. We saw a lot of boys in our office leading up to November 1, big chunks of time, late at night, and yeah.
Do you encourage early admission for everybody's peace of mind?
And what was the last part of it?
To encourage everyone's peace of mind.
For peace of mind. Yes, we do actually. Well, nowadays, there's a lot of pressure from colleges really strongly encourage an early decision application. We would encourage early action. That way, if, it's nice to have that acceptance to work from and then go from there. So at least you have that one acceptance before Christmas. And then we found this year, I think 94% of the class applied early somewhere, either Maryland or early action or early decision. And so there's a big push in that early part of the senior year.
And I'll just emphasize, certainly your son should only apply early decision, so that commitment if they're 100% sure. Don't have them feel like they have to apply someplace ED simply because they want that early notification. Early action is a great plan, and I know that, both my older two daughters, I had them apply EA to a school. Neither of them went to that school, but I could visibly see them relax once they had that decision. Because
it makes a happier scene.
yeah, they basically were like, okay, I have someplace to go, and now let's move on, So, it's early action is great. I, sometimes wonder, I wish that union offered EA, but as an admissions office, I don't know how you manage that because you have no idea how many people are coming. So there's two sides to it, but early action. But if your son knows for sure that there is a school that's where he wants to go, then and they only have early decision, then that's certainly a important decision to make and can very much help them in the process.
Any other questions?
When they, you said the students do get to attend different colleges will come and they get to see them in junior. So is that during class time or how do they?
No, Gilman's really fortunate that it takes place at the end of the lunch period and during fifth period.
So they don't miss it?
They don't miss except if they're musicians, and then they can get permission to. Well, thank you so much, Susie, for being with us. This is really about consuming information, and we really are open and available to you and want to make this process as easy and as stress-free as possible. I'm going to thank Henry Smythe and Bart Griffith for being with us this morning, too. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. And Bart, you have, what, second? And again, thank you. Thank you for sharing your amazing sons with us. I cannot wait to get to know them better. I'm about to go on the senior retreat tomorrow, so think of me, it's going to be fun. We'll be in touch, so please don't hesitate to be in touch with us.
Thank you.
All right.